Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. My name is Diana Skaya. Amid ongoing protests in Slovakia over rising defense spending, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte's scheduled meeting with Prime Minister Robert Fico was unexpectedly cancelled. Now, the meeting was meant to discuss Slovakia's defense commitments, particularly in light of pressure from NATO to rise defense spending. Fico, who was previously rejected increasing that defense spending to 3%, is also heading to the United States for the Conservative Political Action Conference. Now, today we'll explore what these developments mean for Slovakia's future relationship with NATO and its defense policies with our guest, former Defense Minister of Slovakia, Martin Sklenar. Martin, thank you so much for being with us here on TVP World Talks. Pleasure to have you on the program.
Very happy to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Now, there's really so much going on in our region, but now, what do you make of this unexpected cancellation of Fico's meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte? What do you think that it's going to mean for Slovakia's relationship with NATO?
It sends a very bad signal. I mean, that has to be said. Whatever the reasons are, the arrangement was that Prime Minister Fico will be able to meet Secretary General Rutte before the Prime Minister leaves to the United States for his planned trip there. The sudden cancellation from this morning was a surprise, I would say, for everybody concerned. The Secretary General did meet the President and the Minister of Defense. However, not meeting the Prime Minister, one of the most vocal voices of discontent with the policy, some of the policy in the NATO alliance, obviously puts the meetings and the discussions that Secretary General Rutte could have in Bratislava. It puts them a little bit into a relative position, because everything will depend, obviously, on the Prime Minister's opinion later.
All right, now, given the growing pressure from NATO to increase defense spending, why do you think that Slovak officials, including Fico himself, have been so resistant to raising it to 3% of GDP?
Well, it fits into the narrative of we don't want to arm ourselves because we want peace. It's a political position that is, from a defense and security point of view, it's very difficult to actually argument for that kind of position. But this is the Prime Minister's party has taken this stance very clearly. It's also a combination of factors. It's a political way of influencing or trying to attract the voters who are against the war, which is it's usually easier, and also puts the political party in a better light, despite the obvious lack of logic, because you create the peace and the stability by being stronger and providing more deterrence. But there's also the financial pressure coming from the consolidation of the state budget that this government has to go through. And spending 2% of GDP on defense creates another challenge for them to actually solve. We have seen this in the recent past. A significant chunk of the defense budget has been used to finance some of what they call our dual-use projects, but certainly are more on the civilian side of the spectrum, be it hospitals or roads that actually they are trying to sell as dual-use projects.
And going straight into exactly what you just said, how do you see that? How do you think that Slovakia's defense capability compares to other NATO members?
Slovakia is doing well in terms of fulfilling what is expected from the country as part of the NATO defense planning process. The trend has been rather picking up. Still, I mean, this current government is able to build on the progress achieved in the previous terms by other governments. But obviously, I mean, Slovakia is a country of 5.5 million with a rather small armed force, which puts it in a category of a rather smaller force provider for the collective defense. But in terms of developing the capability and spending the money on modernization, track record is good. In the last year, the government has managed to spend 30% of the defense budget on modernization. That's their numbers. We will have to see what will be the actual numbers when NATO defense planners go through the budget and do a due diligence process on how this is going. But Slovakia can play a credible part in the protection of the eastern flank, should it be necessary. The professionality of soldiers that I had the also privilege to see while at the Ministry of Defense is at a very high level. Their capabilities are very comparable with other countries.
Martin, how do you see the larger geopolitical landscape affecting Slovakia's decision-making in terms of defense and its relationship with NATO, particularly with what Russia is continuously doing in Ukraine?
Slovakia is very vulnerable currently. It's under enormous pressure from Russian influence. The pre-election campaign, the political campaign that we have had, was one of the most influenced, and the outcome, obviously, and the government that is now in place is continuing in the same way of keeping up the campaign rhetoric, which is aimed at finding the possibilities to rebalance or reorient even Slovak foreign policy. Not completely away from the EU and NATO, but create opportunities for alleged consultations and cooperation with also other countries. But what we see in practice is that, especially the Prime Minister, when he goes to Brussels, he's very critical, but he managed to go to China and Russia, where he was offering very much the cooperation side of the relationship to develop, which creates questions about how reliable can Slovakia be politically as an ally. It certainly will be very challenging to see what the Slovak position how it will develop before the NATO summit, and what positions Slovakia will take in the expected discussion on the rebalancing of the transatlantic relationship as we go towards NATO summit in The Hague.
I just want to ask you something, because since we did mention Ukraine here, I just want to shift off for a minute. I want to ask you this. Kellogg met Zelensky earlier, but the press conference that should have taken place was canceled after their meeting. Now, the reports that I'm seeing here is that apparently it was coming from the American side, not the Ukrainian side. Do we know why? Can you tell us anything about that?
I don't want to speculate too much, but as we read the current situation, it seems that the negotiations that U.S. and Russia are finding ways how to start them on the situation in Ukraine, and then later probably also how to involve Ukraine in those kind of negotiations. Otherwise, it will have no real meaning. But it seems that this discussion is also there to put pressure a lot on Volodymyr Zelensky and the Ukraine representation to bend a little bit towards the U.S. expectations, especially when it comes to economic cooperation. I would say. We have seen the episode on the rare metal arrangement. Maybe in the U.S. president's strategy, putting more pressure on Ukraine will put him in a better situation also in this economic affairs, and he's playing a very dangerous game in involving the negotiations into this other discussion that is ongoing with Ukraine.
And Martin, just very briefly, because we're almost over time right now, in just under a minute. Now, let's talk about just for a second about Fico is scheduled to speak at the Conservative Political Action Conference in the United States later this week. How significant is this? How do you think that it's actually going to, his attendance is going to affect Slovakia's foreign policy and its stance on NATO? Just very briefly.
He will very much want to use that as confirmation that his policy is the new wave of how politics is being done in the world. That is very accepted, and it's the proper way of seeing the world situation and finding the best solutions, which obviously will be very misinformed and misguided, but certainly he will not miss the opportunity to influence his voters here in Slovakia.
Thank you so much, Martin Sklenar, former Defense Minister of Slovakia, for everything you explained to us today here on World Talks. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
And that completes this edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching, and don't go away. News up next.